The question is that the proposed expenditure be agreed to. I call the member for Latrobe.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I heard with great interest Labor members saying that they've always been firmly committed to countering terrorism and supporting the police. But sadly, back in 2007, when I was the Shadow Parliamentary Secretary for Law Enforcement, I actually highlighted the major cutbacks at the AFP when it came to counter-terrorism, and also the Australian Crime Commission. One of the big issues I had back then was state police were no longer getting the funding to be seconded to the Australian Crime Commission. It left it as a toothless tiger. Moving forward, tragically now we've seen terrorist attacks in the Lint Cafe, and also we had this awful incident outside Endeavour Hills Police Station where 2 police members were stabbed, and it was just amazing that one of them was not killed, and that was by a young person being radicalised. That was Newman Hayter. Can I, first of all, though, before I go on, congratulate the member for Holt Anthony Byrne. You've been truly strong on this issue, on countering terrorism in not only his electorate of Holt but also Latrobe. But jointly we've been fighting for the cause right across Victoria. Sadly, Melbourne, the outer suburbs of Melbourne, we've had planned attacks for Anzac Day, also Melbourne Mother's Day planned attacks, and young Australians who have been radicalised travelling overseas where they believe they are becoming martyrs and blowing themselves up to support this awful cause or pursuit of Daesh. One of the great concerns I also have is outlaw motorcycle gang members who are now being converted in Barwon Prison in Victoria, where we have extremists who have been convicted of terrorist-related activities now patching over with the Mongrels Motorcycle Club. This is of great concern to me and know of members of Victorian Police. And this will bring the might of the outlaw motorcycle gangs with the extremists where anything can happen. So I strongly support the laws when it comes to dual citizens and those who are dual citizens being removed from this country. And also, too, when it comes to community protection intervention orders, the Labor members are actually raising that they are opposed. You're opposed to kicking out dual citizens involved in terrorist-related activities. Is that what you're saying?
I ask you if you've read the legislation.
I'm supportive of when the legislation comes in, and I find it hypocritical of Labor members espousing that they are strong on counter-terrorism when they make allegations like that. The other issue I've actually raised too is community protection intervention orders, and I'm sure the Labor members too. Are you saying you're not supportive of these too? The situation is this, Deputy Speaker. We now have young Australians being radicalised. To me, it's a very serious issue. The situation is we need community protection intervention orders. This is a missing gap between control orders and where police have no powers to stop young people being radicalised on social media or going towards extremist preachers. One of the issues I've actually raised, and that's with Dr Anne Aly, and this is a proposal we're planning to have in my electorate, and that's called a MYHACK program, which will have a hackathon where young people are actually engaged with other young people, come up with ideas and concepts to stop them being radicalised and have these programs in place. And I thank the member again for Holt, who has agreed to be a judge with me on this program. It'll be right across the state, and this is something I greatly look forward to. But in contrast too, I'm greatly concerned about my Labor candidate in the federal seat of Latrobe, who, when I announced this program, and there was a very run-of-the-mill speech in Parliament where he came out and said it's irresponsible scaremongering. Well, we've had these awful incidents with the planned Anzac Day attacks in Melbourne, the Mother's Day attack, we've seen the Lint Cafe attack, we've seen 2 police officers stabbed. For him to say that is absolutely, totally irresponsible himself, and he's since come out and said, I made false and misleading statements. Well, he made those statements to the journalists. I didn't. He's now backtracking. It just shows he's weak on terrorism. And finally, can I ask a question to the Minister? Minister, what measures have we included in the budget to counter violent extremism? Thank you.
The question is that the proposed expenditure be agreed to. I call the Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the member for Latrobe for that question. And I acknowledge that he is somebody who is very experienced in these matters through his former life as a police officer, and it is very deeply concerning to hear about his Labor opponent denigrating the Countering Violent Extremism program that this government is pursuing. The hackathon initiative that he mentioned, that I know that he has hosted in his electorate and will continue to host, was actually demonstrated to the group of international delegates that came to the Countering Violent Extremism Regional Summit in Sydney last week. It is a program that I know that he's deeply committed to, and I congratulate him for that. It's very important that we can do all we can to counter the violent narrative that is coming out of Daesh in the Middle East and the way that they utilise modern social media to send their propaganda deep throughout the Western world really in quite a remarkable way. 100,000 pieces of social media per day emanate from Daesh, which is quite extraordinary. And we, both the Australian government, along with our partners, both in the region but also our traditional security partners, need to find innovative ways that we're going to tackle this. And we are investing in this budget to allow the Australian government to respond to this. We've had situations, as have been mentioned by the member for Latrobe, sadly very close to his electorate. In fact, I think it was in the electorate of the member for Holt, where we have had 2 homegrown terrorist attacks since September last year at Endeavour Hills Police Station and in December in Martin Place. But I think what is less well understood is that there's been a further 6 plots within that time, 6 plots since September, that were disrupted by our authorities. And that's actually a rate of 1 every 5 weeks. And it is a great testament to the skill of our police and to our intelligence community that they have the wherewithal and the ability to be able to disrupt these plots. But clearly they need support from the government, and this government is determined to provide that support. Our CVE program, as has been asked by the member for Latrobe, we will allocate $40 million for that, which will be allocated to countering the violent narratives that young people in particular can be exposed to online. This is triple what the Labor government funded through CVE programs, and it is in addition to the extra $650 million that I've already referred to in my previous answers, which support social services and social cohesion. The $40 million specifically will go toward $5.2 million will go towards a diversion team. $13.4 million will go to the Living Safer Together diversion program. That program seeks to identify young people who might be at risk of radicalisation or being susceptible to these violent ideologies. And the idea behind it is that in a targeted way we intervene to mentor, counsel, do everything we can to put that young person back on the right path. Now that's not an easy process, and unfortunately there's not a template that we can use anywhere in the world that has been 100% effective. But we do need to keep trying different things within this countering violent extremism program to make sure that where it is identified that people are moving down a very dark and violent path, we can correct their behaviour, and we're investing very significantly to be able to do that. We're also allocating money to the Living Safer Together program. And the Attorney-General announced recently that 34 community groups were funded to the tune of $1.6 million. And I was very pleased to update the House that we're allocating another $400,000 to a further 8 organisations through the Living Safer Together program. And the idea behind that program is that we allow community groups to develop the skills that they need to move people away from these ideologies of violence and hatred. As I also mentioned, we'll be spending $21.7 million specifically to counter violent propaganda online. We know that it's in the online environment that terrorists can recruit vulnerable young people in particular. They literally do it like a paedophile would groom a young person. And sadly what we're finding is that the people being groomed are getting far younger in age. Initially it was people in their 20s that we were concerned about, then we were concerned about people in their late teens. Now sadly we're concerned about people in their young teens. And we know, and it's a matter of the public record, that some of the people who our agencies have had to deal with recently have been as young as 14. So I thank the member for Latrobe for that important question. These investments in CVE programs are vitally important.